Eleanor had always imagined celebrating her 70th birthday surrounded by warmth, laughter, and love from her family. After all, turning 70 is not just a milestone, it is a moment that calls for reflection, appreciation, and joy. But this year, things were far from what she had hoped. The day began like any other, with Eleanor waking up early in her cozy home, the sunlight filtering gently through the curtains, the familiar scent of her garden flowers lingering in the air. She had planned a quiet day, perhaps a small cake, a cup of tea, and a phone call with her grandchildren. Little did she know, her life was about to take a shocking turn. As the morning wore on, Eleanor's adult children arrived, ostensibly concerned about her well-being. Their smiles seemed warm at first, but it was not long before their true intentions became painfully clear. The conversation quickly shifted from casual birthday greetings to a tense discussion about her living arrangements. They questioned whether she could manage on her own, hinting that it might be safer for her to move elsewhere. Eleanor felt a rising unease. These were not casual suggestions from worried children, but calculated moves to pressure her into surrendering her independence. Eleanor's heart sank as she realized that this confrontation was not just about concern. It was about control. Her children, who she had raised with care and dedication, were now challenging her right to remain in the home she had built over decades. Their words, though polite on the surface, carried an undercurrent of manipulation, attempting to instill doubt in her mind about her capabilities. Each suggestion to consider a safer option felt like a subtle push toward giving up everything she had worked so hard for. Yet, Eleanor was not one to be easily intimidated. She had spent her life navigating challenges, making difficult decisions, and standing her ground when necessary. While her children may have underestimated her resilience, Eleanor knew that this birthday would not mark a surrender, it would mark a turning point. She took a deep breath, steadying her emotions, aware that the path ahead would require both wisdom and courage. This day, she realized, was not just about celebrating her age, but about reclaiming her power and asserting her rights. As the conversation intensified, Eleanor's mind raced. She knew she had to protect herself, not with anger, but with careful planning, clear thinking, and perhaps even legal guidance if necessary. Every moment became a test of patience and strategy. Eleanor understood that this confrontation, while painful, was an opportunity to reveal truths, set boundaries, and ultimately show that age does not equate to helplessness. If you have ever faced moments where loved ones challenge your independence or question your decisions, Eleanor's story is a powerful reminder that strength and wisdom often come from life experience. Stay tuned as we follow Eleanor's journey, her clever responses, and how she navigates the difficult path of standing up for herself against those she once trusted most. If you are inspired by Eleanor's courage, do not forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next part of this incredible story. Her journey is a testament to resilience, and you will want to see how she turns a challenging birthday into a powerful moment of triumph. As the day unfolded, Eleanor began to notice subtle shifts in the atmosphere that went far beyond mere concern for her well-being. Her children Susan, Michael, Kevin, and Brenda had arrived with smiles that initially seemed warm, almost reassuring, yet there was a tension beneath their expressions that Eleanor could not ignore. At first, their conversation revolved around her safety, her health, and whether she might be better off living somewhere more manageable. But as the discussion deepened, the veneer of care began to crumble, revealing motives that were far more calculated than she could have imagined. Eleanor listened carefully, her heart tightening as fragments of their true intentions emerged in between carefully chosen words, veiled as concern yet sharp with self-interest. It became apparent that the questions about her ability to manage on her own were not about her safety at all. They were carefully crafted probes, designed to seed doubt and pave the way for more extreme actions. Eleanor realized that her children were not merely suggesting alternatives, they were attempting to manipulate her, to corner her into a decision that would benefit them financially rather than emotionally. Susan, always the most outspoken, began subtly hinting at the difficulty of maintaining the home, mentioning repairs and expenses that might overwhelm someone living alone. Michael followed, speaking with a practiced tone of reason, questioning whether Eleanor's management of her finances was truly sound, implying that intervention might be necessary for her own good. Kevin and Brenda contributed with their own veiled comments, each building upon the last, creating a chorus of concern that felt orchestrated rather than spontaneous. Eleanor recognized the pattern immediately. This was not care. This was strategy. As Eleanor probed their intentions, asking thoughtful questions and observing their reactions, the truth began to crystallize. Her children were motivated not by worry for her health or happiness, but by a desire to seize control of her assets. Her home, the sanctuary she had nurtured for decades, was their target. The savings she had painstakingly accumulated over a lifetime, each dollar earned and invested with diligence and foresight, was now at risk. The more Eleanor pressed, the more the subtle tension escalated, until finally the veil slipped, and the underlying motives could no longer be denied. Threats began to surface, thinly disguised as advice and warnings. They suggested, ever so cautiously, that if Eleanor continued to resist, steps could be taken to declare her mentally incompetent. A legal mechanism they implied would make the transfer of her assets and the control of her home far easier. Eleanor's mind raced as she absorbed the gravity of their scheme. These were her own children, the very people she had raised with love, guidance, and patience, now plotting to undermine her autonomy in pursuit of wealth. Her chest tightened, a mix of sorrow and disbelief weighing on her, yet beneath the shock was a steady flame of resolve. Eleanor had always believed that family meant trust, loyalty, and shared history, and now she faced the stark reality that love alone does not prevent greed. The betrayal was profound, yet within it was a call to action, a challenge that demanded not just emotional endurance but strategic clarity. She reflected on the decades she had spent managing her household, her finances, and her life, and recognized that her experience gave her an advantage they had underestimated. Eleanor knew the importance of documentation, of legal safeguards, and of careful planning, and she understood that confronting her children would require a measured approach rather than immediate confrontation. Their threats of mental incompetence, though chilling, were not absolute. They relied on her hesitancy, on the assumption that fear would drive her into compliance. Eleanor resolved not to grant them that power. She would respond, but she would respond with precision, ensuring that every action she took reinforced her rights and protected her legacy. As the conversation continued, Eleanor maintained a calm exterior, listening intently while mentally mapping out her next steps. Each comment her children made, each insinuation of doubt or concern, became evidence in her mind, a record of intent that could later support her if legal intervention became necessary. Eleanor recognized the psychological tactics at play: the careful balance of pressure and feigned concern, the implied threats thinly cloaked in polite dialogue, and the subtle attempts to make her feel incapable. She countered each point not with anger, but with clarity, calmly affirming her independence, citing her financial decisions, and maintaining her composure even as her children's insistence escalated. Eleanor's awareness of their strategy only deepened her determination. She realized that this confrontation, painful as it was, offered an opportunity not just to protect herself but to assert her strength, intelligence, and autonomy in a way that could not be ignored. By carefully documenting interactions, seeking advice, and remaining composed, she could turn their aggression into evidence of their intentions, effectively shielding herself from the manipulations they hoped would succeed. The tension in the room was thick, yet Eleanor's resolve remained unshaken. She was no longer merely reacting, but actively shaping the narrative in her favor, demonstrating that experience and wisdom could counteract greed and deceit even when it came from those closest to her. In this moment, Eleanor understood the stakes fully. Her home, her savings, and the respect she had earned throughout her life were on the line, but so was her dignity. She had built a life defined by independence, careful judgment, and resilience, and she would not allow the pursuit of wealth by her own children to erode that foundation. The confrontation was no longer just about the house or the money, it was about asserting that she remained the author of her own life, capable of making decisions, and deserving of respect. In the face of calculated manipulation and thinly veiled threats, Eleanor's clarity and courage shone through, revealing that even in moments of profound betrayal, a steadfast mind and a strong will can preserve both legacy and self-respect. As the tension in Eleanor's living room escalated, a presence quietly emerged that would alter the dynamics of the confrontation in ways her children could never have anticipated. Chloe, her 16-year-old granddaughter, had been standing near the doorway, observing the exchange with wide, observant eyes, sensing the unease that filled the room like a thick, unspoken fog. Unlike the adults, whose motives were twisted with greed and carefully concealed malice, Chloe's reactions were immediate and unfiltered, guided by instinct and genuine care for her grandmother. She had grown up hearing stories of Eleanor's resilience, of the lessons in compassion and wisdom that had shaped the family, and now, faced with the stark contrast between Eleanor's dignity and her own parents' duplicity, Chloe found herself compelled to act. At first, her intervention was subtle, a soft word or a gentle question aimed at easing the mounting tension, yet it carried a clarity and innocence that cut through the calculated manipulation surrounding them. Her voice, tinged with concern and incredulity, began to highlight the disparity between what was being said and what was truly intended. Chloe asked questions that her parents could not answer without revealing their ulterior motives. Each inquiry a quiet probe that exposed the cracks in their orchestrated display of concern. While Eleanor maintained her composed, strategic demeanor, Chloe's courage emanated naturally, unshaken by fear or doubt, and her presence began to shift the atmosphere in ways Eleanor could not yet articulate but deeply appreciated. Chloe's observations were keen. She noticed the subtle smirks, the careful avoidance of certain topics, and the forced reassurances that did not align with genuine care. Unlike the adults whose words were laced with hidden threats and veiled ultimatums, Chloe's responses were sincere, drawing attention to the unfairness and emotional manipulation occurring before her eyes. She voiced what Eleanor could only articulate with caution, pointing out the inconsistency between the concern expressed by her parents and the actions they had taken. In doing so, Chloe created a bridge between generational perspectives, the clarity of youthful empathy meeting the seasoned wisdom of experience. The contrast was stark, illuminating the moral divide between innocence guided by conscience and adulthood corrupted by greed. Her intervention did not go unnoticed. Eleanor felt a surge of warmth and relief as Chloe's words cut through the tension, providing both moral support and a sense of solidarity that reinforced Eleanor's own resolve. Each comment Chloe made was a reminder that Eleanor was not facing this ordeal alone, that the values she had instilled over decades had not vanished but were alive and manifest in the courage of the young. The children, meanwhile, were momentarily disarmed. The confidence that had fueled their manipulations wavered as Chloe's directness forced them to confront the implications of their actions. What had seemed like an unassailable plan, carefully layered with psychological tactics and threats, now faced the illuminating force of truth spoken without guile. Chloe did not simply challenge the arguments presented by her parents. She embodied a standard of integrity that contrasted sharply with the duplicity in the room. Her defense of Eleanor was not merely verbal. It was rooted in observation, empathy, and moral clarity. She reminded her parents of the human cost of their actions, highlighting the pain and betrayal that their schemes inflicted on a woman who had devoted her life to raising and nurturing them. Each word was measured yet heartfelt, carrying the weight of conviction that could not be dismissed or ignored. It was in Chloe's voice, so filled with honest concern, that the true gravity of the situation became undeniable even to those who had hoped to conceal it beneath a veneer of care. Eleanor watched as Chloe continued to speak, a quiet pride swelling within her. The girl's courage was a living testament to the values Eleanor had championed throughout her life: empathy, integrity, and the strength to stand up against wrongdoing regardless of personal risk. With each phrase, Chloe drew the room into a new moral alignment, where truth and justice began to outweigh fear and manipulation. The younger generation, represented by Chloe, served as a mirror, reflecting back the stark reality of her parents' actions and emphasizing the consequences of prioritizing wealth over compassion. Eleanor realized that Chloe's presence was not only a source of comfort but also a strategic asset, reinforcing the truth in ways that Eleanor herself could not have achieved alone. As the confrontation progressed, Chloe's influence grew more pronounced. She challenged assumptions, questioned motives, and called attention to inconsistencies in arguments, all while maintaining respect for the adult perspective, even when it had strayed into unethical territory. Her courage inspired Eleanor to speak with renewed clarity and authority, reinforcing her stance with facts, documentation, and unwavering calm. Together, the grandmother and granddaughter formed a subtle yet powerful alliance, a duality of experience and youthful insight that countered the manipulations arrayed against them. In that living room, Chloe's actions illustrated a broader truth: courage is not confined to age, and moral clarity can emerge from the unlikeliest of sources. The contrast between her untainted empathy and the calculated behavior of the adults underscored the depth of the betrayal Eleanor faced, yet it also provided a beacon of hope. Through Chloe, Eleanor saw that integrity could endure, that values passed down through generations could manifest in acts of bravery, and that even in the shadow of manipulation and greed, the presence of an honest, courageous heart could illuminate the path forward. Chloe's intervention transformed a confrontation that could have been crushing into a testament to resilience, demonstrating that family bonds rooted in truth and compassion have the power to withstand even the most calculated of betrayals. Eleanor's mind, sharp and precise despite the emotional strain that filled her home, moved with the efficiency of decades of experience as she faced the unprecedented betrayal unfolding before her. She had anticipated the possibility of her children's greed surfacing, though she had never imagined it would manifest with such brazen audacity on what was meant to be a celebratory day. As her children Susan, Michael, Kevin, and Brenda attempted to coerce her into relinquishing control of her assets, Eleanor's calm demeanor became her most formidable weapon, a shield forged from both preparation and an innate understanding of human behavior. With her photographic memory, a trait that had served her well throughout her life, she began to catalogue every word, every gesture, and every insinuation made by her children, storing each detail in a mental ledger that would later serve as an unassailable record of their manipulations. Her approach was far from reactive. Eleanor moved methodically, translating the chaos into a structured response that prioritized both safety and strategic advantage. While Chloe's youthful courage had provided moral reinforcement, Eleanor's experience transformed it into tangible action. She quietly accessed her personal records, reviewing financial documents, bank statements, and prior correspondence, identifying the points of vulnerability her children might attempt to exploit. With precise movements and an unflinching gaze, she activated security measures she had established with her financial institutions, ensuring that any attempts to access funds or alter account information without her consent would trigger immediate alerts. Each phone call she placed, each security protocol she initiated, was executed with the calm authority of someone who had long navigated complexities both personal and professional, and who now faced her own family's duplicity with unwavering resolve. Eleanor's preparations extended beyond finances. She had long considered legal safeguards as essential armor, and now she mobilized these resources with careful deliberation. Calls were made to trusted attorneys who were briefed on the situation, ready to intervene if her children attempted to enforce any of the forged documents or threats of declaring her mentally incompetent. Eleanor's mind, sharp and strategic, mapped out each potential move, anticipating counteractions and preparing responses in advance, effectively turning what could have been a moment of vulnerability into a stage upon which she commanded control. The contrast between her poised execution and her children's escalating frustration underscored the gravity of the misjudgment they had made, mistaking intimidation for leverage. Even as the confrontation intensified, Eleanor maintained a demeanor that combined patience, authority, and subtle psychological mastery. She listened carefully, acknowledging statements without yielding to provocation, allowing her children to reveal the full extent of their intentions through their own words and behavior. Every demand, every insinuation, was met with composed scrutiny, and Eleanor made careful mental notes that would serve as evidence if the matter escalated further. Her ability to remain unshaken under emotional duress not only protected her materially but also psychologically destabilized her children, whose confidence relied on the assumption that fear and compliance could be manipulated through familial pressure. With each thwarted attempt to sway her, their frustration became increasingly evident, and Eleanor's control over the situation solidified. Eleanor also utilized her environment as a tactical asset. Knowing the layout of her home intimately, she ensured that critical documents and devices were secure, positioning herself strategically to manage both immediate interactions and potential escalation. The living room, once a space filled with the warmth of family gatherings, had transformed into a controlled arena where Eleanor's awareness of every sound, movement, and nuance allowed her to act decisively when necessary. Even as her children raised their voices and attempted to project authority, Eleanor's calm presence created a buffer of rationality, ensuring that any rash decisions made by them could not succeed. Her ability to blend vigilance with composure created a dual shield, protecting her assets while also preserving her dignity and emotional well-being. The interplay between Eleanor's meticulous preparation and her children's reckless ambition revealed the profound contrast between experience and impulsivity, wisdom and greed. As the hours passed, she documented interactions discreetly, using both mental notes and discrete recordings to ensure a complete record of events, capturing threats, inconsistencies, and attempts at coercion. Each entry reinforced the narrative of Eleanor as a capable, vigilant, and resolute individual who refused to succumb to manipulation, demonstrating an intelligence and foresight that her children had underestimated. By transforming what could have been a moment of vulnerability into a demonstration of control, Eleanor subtly redefined the power dynamic within the household. Eleanor's actions were not merely defensive. They were strategic assertions of autonomy, demonstrating to her children and to herself that she was capable of defending both her rights and her dignity. By the time the confrontation reached its peak, it was clear that the advantage had shifted irrevocably. Her children's schemes, meticulously orchestrated in their minds, began to unravel under the scrutiny of her vigilance, her strategic legal and financial safeguards, and her unwavering composure. Eleanor's ability to remain calm, combined with the precise execution of her preparations, ensured that she could navigate the confrontation without compromise, turning what might have been an emotionally devastating encounter into a testament to foresight, resilience, and the enduring power of prudence. In those critical hours, Eleanor's presence transformed the household into a controlled environment where every threat could be anticipated, every potential breach neutralized, and every action documented for legal protection. The deliberate calm that she maintained became an unspoken force, demonstrating that true strength often resides not in aggression but in patience, clarity, and the careful orchestration of one's resources. Her children, though initially confident in their coercion, faced an immovable figure, and in that realization, Eleanor achieved a subtle but profound victory. Through careful planning, quick thinking, and the steadfast application of her extensive knowledge and experience, Eleanor not only safeguarded her home and assets but also reaffirmed her autonomy, demonstrating that wisdom and preparation can transform even the most personal crises into opportunities for assertive, dignified action. By the quiet light of dawn, Eleanor moved through her home with a serene determination that belied the storm of the previous day. The confrontation with her children had left a lingering tension, yet she remained unshaken, fully aware that her careful planning and composed execution the night before had put her firmly in control. While her children had imagined a swift triumph over her, their miscalculations had played directly into her hands. Every step she took that morning was measured and precise, a continuation of the meticulous strategy she had employed to protect herself, her assets, and her dignity. Eleanor's first priority was securing her finances. She initiated the final transfers of her accounts to ensure that the funds were safely moved to entities beyond her children's reach. Each transaction was executed with the foresight of someone who understood both human nature and institutional processes, ensuring that no loopholes could be exploited. The morning sun streamed through the windows as she verified the transfers, her movements calm but purposeful, every click of the keyboard echoing the quiet triumph of foresight over greed. Eleanor's photographic memory allowed her to cross-check details instantly, confirming that no step had been overlooked, and she felt a quiet satisfaction in knowing that the protective measures she had taken were not just theoretical but fully operational. Next, she turned her attention to the house itself. The property that had been at the center of her children's scheming was no longer a potential instrument of their manipulation. Eleanor had arranged a sale discreetly, with all legal formalities completed the previous evening. By the time the morning had fully arrived, the transfer of ownership was finalized, leaving her children with no opportunity to interfere or contest the sale. Their assumptions about entitlement and control had blinded them to Eleanor's capabilities, and as they awoke, their confidence quickly unraveled into confusion and frustration. Eleanor's calm reflection on the events highlighted the power of patience and meticulous planning. She had allowed her children's own aggression and impatience to create openings that she could exploit strategically. As the day progressed, Eleanor took time to appreciate the significance of her actions. She understood that the confrontation had been more than a dispute over money or property. It had been a test of character, resilience, and intelligence. Her ability to maintain composure under pressure, to anticipate the moves of those who sought to manipulate her, and to act decisively without succumbing to anger had turned a potentially devastating experience into a demonstration of agency and empowerment. She recognized that victory did not always need to be loud or dramatic. Sometimes it was quiet, methodical, and thorough, visible only in the successful safeguarding of what mattered most. Meanwhile, her children were confronted with the stark reality of their misjudgment. Susan, Michael, Kevin, and Brenda were forced to reckon with the fact that their attempts at coercion had failed entirely. The house, the accounts, and Eleanor's carefully accumulated savings were beyond their reach. The contrast between their expectations and reality became painfully clear as the day unfolded, underscoring the consequences of underestimating wisdom, experience, and strategic foresight. Their frustration, once fueled by a sense of entitlement, was replaced by a grudging acknowledgement of Eleanor's capability, a recognition that, though uncomfortable, served as a critical lesson in humility and the limits of manipulation. Eleanor, for her part, remained composed and dignified. She did not gloat or confront her children with accusations. Rather, she allowed the outcomes to speak for themselves. Her victory was not about retaliation, it was about preservation, self-respect, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that she had navigated a complex and emotionally charged situation with integrity. She spent the remainder of the morning reviewing her next steps, ensuring that all legal protections remained in place, and considering how best to move forward with her life on her own terms. The lessons of the previous day, combined with the success of her strategic actions, had reinforced her belief in the importance of vigilance, preparation, and measured patience in the face of adversity. Chloe, Eleanor's granddaughter, remained a steadfast source of support throughout the ordeal. Her presence had been a reminder of the value of courage, empathy, and moral clarity, and Eleanor took comfort in seeing the resilience and compassion that Chloe displayed. The contrast between Chloe's integrity and her parents' greed underscored the broader theme of the story, that wisdom, prudence, and ethical action ultimately prevail over manipulation and selfish ambition. Eleanor and Chloe shared a quiet moment, acknowledging both the challenges they had faced and the triumphs they had achieved together. It was a moment of reflection, gratitude, and the reaffirmation of family bonds defined by loyalty and mutual respect rather than entitlement. As the day drew to a close, Eleanor felt a renewed sense of empowerment and purpose. She understood that her experience would serve as a lasting testament to the importance of preparation, courage, and strategic thinking. By taking control of her finances, protecting her assets, and asserting her autonomy, she had not only safeguarded her material well-being but also set an example for those around her, including Chloe, demonstrating that even in the face of betrayal, integrity, patience, and foresight could secure victory. Thank you for listening to Eleanor's story. If you found her journey inspiring, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss more stories of courage, resilience, and wisdom. Your support helps bring these real-life tales to a wider audience, and every like and subscription encourages us to continue sharing stories that empower and uplift. Don't forget to comment below with your thoughts on Eleanor's strategy. How would you have handled such a situation? Together, we can learn from each other and celebrate the strength of the human spirit.